You ready to do this thing?
Let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sweaty Casuals, brought to you by Snowflake Sanctuary Discord server. This is a podcast where we usually talk about the games we love to play, from the state of ranked systems to our thoughts on the newest sensations and everything in between. My name is Zach. My co-host is missing today, but I will be your guide as we traverse Elo Hell. A small reminder, we do swear, so your discretion is advised. Today we're joined by ParadoxMuse and DrazilKassen, who have both played the Pokemon games for multiple generations. Nox lost her voice, and it means I have to host this alone, which is terrifying. Thanks for being here for me, you two.
Always.
Let's get started with our icebreaker. I came up with it just a few minutes ago. What's your favorite memory gaming with your sibling?
Video games specifically, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hold on. That means I gotta change my answer.
So, actually, I'm going to be perfectly honest. When I read that, I thought it said memory game, not memory gaming. So, mine was going to be this game that we had when I was a kid. It was like tiles, and you had to like flip them over and match the tiles. You remember playing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that was mine. But memory gaming, I'll actually go on that one. Honestly, it was us trying to compromise. And so Drazel is my sibling, just for those that may or may not know. So topical. We had this television that was well past its prime. It was a projector television. It was huge. It was clunky, but actually like compromising, because you could do this cool thing where you split the screen and one person had the left side and one person could have the right side. The left side had volume. And so just me being obsessed with Path of Radiance at the time and her being obsessed with Halo at the time, and just having that compromise of like, okay, I don't need sound. You go play Halo on that side. I'm going to play Fire Emblem on this side. Had two different consoles, two different inputs. And my mom definitely didn't do that. Our mom didn't do that on purpose, but oh my gosh, that settled so many arguments. And yeah, great memory.
Love gaming alone next to my sibling.
Yes, exactly. It was
yeah.
Yes, it totally, because I was not a Halo person. I never did FPSs, but like, yeah, no, it was gaming alone next to your sibling. Accurate description, and it was wonderful. I beat Fire Emblem way too many times.
Drazel, what do you got?
This just came up from the depths of my memory, sparked by I don't know what, but randomly remembered the Beyblade game for the PlayStation.
Okay.
And I don't know, just suddenly had very fond memories of that. So like the PlayStation 1 Beyblade game. Fond memories. I don't even know if that was 2-player, but we're going with it. Yeah, okay, good.
I remember that.
I was hoping. I figured it would be.
There's a lot. Like, that's a great question. That would be an interesting future
I'm going
cast.
with that. I'm going with this Beyblade game.
The other one, and I know before we even get to our topic, do you remember trying to find the last two gems in Spyro Age of the Dragons? And we just could not do that.
I'm sure we cheated. I'm sure we looked
Well, we
that
did
up.
eventually cheat to get the last two gems so we could go to the bonus round. But like the amount of time that we put in to get the last two gems, and it was on that firework factory one.
I remember old Spyro.
Yeah. Lots of good memories. That's a
good times.
For me, you two were around. It would probably be doing our Pixelmon tournament with my sister.
That was a fun one. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And granted, there was a lot of people there. It was a lot of fun just in general, but gosh, there were some great moments. I have your it was a lot of math. No, I still have that Twitch clip saved.
Oh yeah, it's saved on my Switch. Like, it's fine. it's there in perpetuity because it's hilarious. Absolutely. And it's mentioned on a previous podcast. I got a kidney stone while streaming. Like, it was great. 10 out of 10. Marcy also did end up capturing the Virizion on like day one of just throwing fastballs, and then brought it to the first tournament. I remember that. So that was
funny.
And
we were like, oh yeah, we didn't
make rules.
It was you rated, I think. So we were like, okay.
Yeah, why not? It was just whatever, the first three that you can capture. Yeah, a lot of good gaming memories. So
With that said, let's get into our big topic today. We're going to discuss the Pokemon gimmicks, all of them, and which one may or may not be the best. So, for those who are super unfamiliar, we have Gems in Gen 5, we have Mega Evolution, which was introduced in Gen 6, the Z Crystals in Gen 7, the Dynamax in Gen 8, where they got all big, and the newest one, the Terrestrialization, where they turn into shiny crystals. So, Paradox, which gimmick was your favorite?
Megas.
Megas?
I think it's like you could just start that conversation there. I think gens.
I mean, we could.
I mean, yeah, right. Like gems were cool. But I'm gonna be honest too. I think I was a little bit into competitive, but they were never like a competitive item, so they never interested me too much. Megas were just so well done. It gave a lot of life to Pokemon that didn't necessarily have an evolution or were thrown to the wayside, or even ones that people already thought were cool. And then you have like Z crystals were fun, but they were just a little overpowered. Dynamax I absolutely hated, and then Terrestrialization was pretty good. So Megas were 10 out of 10. One of the best mechanics I've ever seen in a Pokemon game.
Curious by those thoughts, but Drazzle, which one was your favorite?
I didn't play a ton of Gen 5, 6, or 7. I picked it back up with 8 and 9. So Sword Shield and then Scarlet Violet. So I don't have much to comment on for
I know you did some
the
stuff with
first.
Megas, though.
Maybe I did. I have no memory of it. Unless we're talking about Mathelmon again.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, okay. In terms of favorites, I liked the Terrestrialization because it was pretty. So
Valid.
I'm not ashamed to admit it. I liked that one.
It was
didn't.
definitely one of the better parts of Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah.
The performance on the Switch was not great.
I mean, is it ever?
That's
I
interesting.
also hopped out of Pokemon for a couple of years, and then I came back for Gens 8 and 9. I would still say Megas, with my very limited experience with them. And it's just because they were much more interesting. You had a lot more options in team building. You had to kind of think about them. And there were a limited number of options. It wasn't trying to plan for 10 bajillion different things.
It's
Z crystals are the one that bothered me. Gems were straight up overpowered.
yeah. Gems.
And there's a reason why only one of them is still in the game.
The gems?
Mm-hmm. Normal gem is still in the game.
Flying gem's still in the game too.
Is it?
I thought I'm pretty sure all the gems are actually still in the game, but like they were cut back pretty heavily.
They were
their
nerfed.
In their heyday, like the main one that you wanted to use was the flying one because of acrobatics.
Yep.
You'd use it and then you'd have a 110. But I think also, wasn't it like 100% boosted, the initial, and then it did 50%?
I thought it was 50% just flat on the first one and then nothing else. But I might have to double check that.
Yeah.
I'll let you double check that.
It's funny that like you even brought up the gems because honestly, I like didn't even consider that as a mechanic. And I guess that could go into a deeper conversation of like what actually constitutes a mechanic for some of these games.
The only reason why I can include it is because, you know, if you go look at Wolfie VGC or Aaron Cybertron Zhang or Ray Rizzo's content, any of their content, they're going to bring up how the gems were such a massive impact on Gen 5. And on the competitive scene, it was true. I mean, Steel Gem Bullet Punch Scissor was a big thing because after a Swords Dance, it could pretty much choose whatever it wanted to OHKO.
So I just looked it up. All gems are still in the game, but now it's only a 30% boost. It was 50% on release.
Yep.
So that would make a lot of sense as to why it was so strong just on release and everything. Just if you could just, they were essentially like early versions of Z crystals. But
well, I was going to say it's like having a choice band for one move and just one move, which that alone is kind of ridiculous.
Without the drawback of choice band.
Yep.
Right. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it made me think when I first looked through the list too. you could consider like other things as gimmicks or mechanics just on release.
Oh yeah.
Like Gen 4 was, the weather generation as well. You saw the expansion of weather in general and ways to kind of use that. Sand cloaks, Sandstream was added, and there was another one that was added that or Sandstream was in.
Sandstream was in, but more people got it. Powdon got it.
Sand Rush and Sand Cloak were added.
Yes.
And then you had the ones with snow, and then you had, ones more with rain, where like Swift Swim was already in. Swift Swim might have already been in, but then they kind of expanded upon it.
Yeah.
So, and then previous generation abilities were added, right? Like Gen 3 abilities are added for the first time.
Oh, for sure. I picked these ones because this was like these didn't really leave their generation.
Right. That's true. That's true too.
With the exception of Megas.
Yep.
But all of these kind of stayed within one generation, and then they went away, or they got very heavily turned down.
Yeah. I think at the time too that you have Megas being introduced, you had like a crossroads of the fan base. Honestly, like Pokemon had kind of been going downhill. You can see it in just sales in general. Like Gen 4 was sold really well, but Gen 5 did not sell very well. And so they needed a good reboot essentially to the series. And so by bringing in like a gimmick that's very similar to the only other Pocket Monster-esque franchise with Digimon, right? And just basically doing Digivolving with the Pokemon, it made a lot of sense. But they balanced it very well competitively for the most part. For the most part. Two major exceptions, but that's
I can think of a handful.
Mega Kangaskhan being one, and then Mega Rayquaza being like the other major ones.
Yes. The Primals were
competitive, but
only with each other.
They were somewhat balanced, and they did go back and kind of balance some of the things. Rayquaza was never going to be balanced because of just the nature of how it mega evolves, but like overall still it was a very great mechanic. I
would say that you'd also have a few issues with Mega Mawile could be incredibly oppressive, so would Mega Salamence. I think Mega Pinsir had a heyday for a little bit after that, after Salamence kind of got banned from a bunch of places. I think Mega Rayquaza kind of sums it up, though, when you have to create a whole new tier just for one Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. Just it was a flawed design, and they live and kind of learn from it. I think Z Crystals makes sense as kind of like a good successor, though. You can tell they were trying to take what they learned from Gems and like reapply it, which makes sense
my
too.
one issue with it is that for damaging moves, it was easy.
Yeah.
Damaging moves, it would turn from, whatever the base power of the original move was to something between, what was it, like 140 and 200 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
It would hit really hard.
Yeah. And through Protect.
Which could be, however, on the other hand, every status move also having a Z version, I'm sorry, I don't know what Z Trick Room does.
Z Splash is +3 to attack.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to memorize that for every single... The only one I ever knew is Z Celebrate.
Yep.
Because it's just an Omni Boost. I'm not going to go learn that for every single status move. I'm sorry.
And that was definitely a fallback of it. Just trying to be creative with something and just needing to do it for all the moves, but it definitely kind of had its fallbacks. But one thing we should probably talk about is terrestrialization. Like, I think that, because you bring up an interesting point, Drazil, where it's like
that it's pretty.
Like it is probably the most like physically appealing one.
Mm-hmm.
Like what did you like about it most? Like what about it was pretty, I guess, would be the question.
Do you like the silly hats?
It was shiny. I did like that each one had their own icon for whatever type that it was. That was cute too.
I didn't like rock versus ground. That was my only issue with it.
Oh, where ground was like an earth and rock was what?
It was a little Parthenon.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I could see.
It took me a while to figure out, oh wait, no, that's not rock. That's why this isn't as effective as I thought it'd be.
Yeah. I will say,
look
I
up
think
all of them in particular to see what they were, but
the nice part about Scarlet and Violet is they did make it where you did battle somebody whose ace terrestrialized into every single type.
Yes,
So
and that
you
was a
could
cool
actually
thing.
see all the hats.
Well,
You
I
were
also
kind of forced to.
yeah, well, most of them. I'm trying to think. You didn't see the. I don't think you saw any of the Titans, or
What do you mean?
when you go to fight the Titans, you don't see the hats.
No. But like, so each one of the Titans is further represented by a different character in the game. So like the Dark Titan is not dark. He's represented. Which one is he?
It's a flying Titan.
Was it Flying Titan? I thought it was Dark
Bombardier.
Flying.
Yeah.
Well, you do see flying because that's the.
Yep. That's
No. He was
he's
normal.
in the Elite Four.
Oh, flying is used in the Elite Four. Dragon was used in the Elite Four instead of
Steel was. What are the other two Titans?
Because then
Rock?
Dark was used by the Professor's child.
And Rock is Glamora at the end.
Rock is Glamora. So they did make it where you do end up seeing every. Oh yeah. The normal one, he actually does flying in the Elite Four. That's right, because he was normal and flying.
Hey, we love Larry here.
Larry, yes, that's who it was. So I do, even though Megas were my favorite, I think that terrestrialization was probably the most balanced and probably added the most to competitive Pokemon.
I think it says a lot that Gen 9 was the first gen that they said, hey, we need to have open team sheets for competitive. Because trying to plan for any Pokemon becoming any of the other 18 types was just too rough.
It still adds that like next level of strategy, you know, where Pokemon can get really stale. It's like if I see a Kangaskhan in Gen 6, it ain't staying Kangaskhan. If I see Absol, there was so many Pokemon that were shit in Gen 6 that got Megas. Just being blunt, you know, that if I saw them, it's like, okay, no. It's Mega Evolving. I know exactly what it is. You know, I know exactly what item this thing has. Rayquaza on release, it's like, okay, it's gonna Mega. Just expect it. If you saw a Groudon, it was going to Primal. But with the terrestrialization, I agree that it's good that the team forms were made, or open team forms were made, but it adds another level of strategy that can actually carry the game forward and keep it fresh, keep it neat. So
at what point does it stop being strategy and just kind of turn into rolling the dice?
I mean, there's always been an element of that in Pokemon. It's one of the reasons why the game is good, is because you can outplay somebody or you can get outplayed and still have a chance to win.
Sure.
it's the same thing with like card games, you know, where there is a level of strategy of knowing and playing to outs. If I know that my opponent is a ghost type terrestrialized normal type Pokemon, I don't know, pick a Kangaskhan. Boom. Ghost type terrestrialized Kangaskhan. I know that I really shouldn't hit him with a ghost move because he's normal, even though he's probably going to terrestrialize into ghost. So I have to have some sort of team building to understand that whatever my Pokemon is to either counter the Kangaskhan or go even with Kangaskhan, that it can actually cover both ghost and normal now. In other words, I'm not just bringing a fighting move and I'm not just bringing a ghost move to counter it. I'm probably bringing a dark move so that if they do terrestrialize, it's super, and if they don't, it's like neutrally effective, right? So there is that level of like thinking on the team comp that I like, but I think that it was visually one of the more appealing gimmicks as well. Megas were fun and quick, but there really wasn't a lot of pomp and circumstance. With the terrestrialization, it's like, okay, I'm terrestrializing, right? You knew there was a lot of animation that went on. They made it very pretty for a reason.
I think the other thing with Megas was because they were so unique and so specific to certain Pokemon. One, you just had such a limited number. There's only how many Megas? 50?
46-ish.
46.
Don't
So
ask me how I know that.
I'm gonna guess Pokemon Go.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. But just because they're so limited, you automatically have this it's like almost like a team building restriction because you feel like you kind of need to use it. And then on top of that, within it, you have this own, because you only get one, you have your own meta within that.
Mhm.
And it just kind of forced team building into a much more narrow.
I can see that. That's actually a good argument for it, or like against it as well. Is it kind of forced
Particularly
you?
when you look at, the Mega Salamances, the Mega Pincers, the Mega Metagrosses, things that go from 600 base stats to 700 or thereabout.
It also, they weren't necessarily super balanced. There was just objectively one. Mega Kangaskhan, Parental Bond, is still one of the strongest abilities in the game, even though it's been nerfed.
Had to get banned.
It had to get banned, right? So you have Mega Gengar with Shadow Tag again. What are you going to do with it? It had to get banned. With those types of Pokemon, it
Singles. We're talking about singles.
Oh yeah, singles. True. With those particular megas, it's tough, but it still gave life to a handful of other Pokemon that they didn't necessarily want to give it an evolution. They wanted to still give life to that Pokemon.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, Mega Manectric.
Yeah.
Who the heck plays with Manectric? No one does, but it's
one.
World Championship.
Yep. So, it's begged others to make more Mega Evolution Pokemon. There's been so much fan art that's come out of Mega Evolutions. And that's honestly helped with just marketing and just getting more notice out there and just having a community discussion. Mega Flygon being discussed ad nauseum online and people praying for it to happen in Legends Z-A. What?
It deserves it.
It deserves it, right? We haven't talked too much about Dynamax. So how'd you?
I have a feeling that your answer is going to be because you only have a lot of experience with two of them. Which gimmick should come back is probably going to be Dynamax. So what don't you like about Dynamax?
I don't know if you're going to like my answer to this, but it was the first Pokemon game that I'd played after a break since Emerald.
So
Ruby,
Gen 3.
Sapphire, Emerald. Yeah. So it had been a while since I played a Pokemon game. And they tried to get me to do Dynamaxing, and I brute forced the game without using Dynamax. Unless it made me. Because I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm not using it. So I didn't use Dynamax unless it physically made me do it.
You don't like the big Pokemon?
See, I don't know. I just wasn't having it, I guess. I can't explain it to you beyond that.
3 turns for that amount of a buff is insane. Like, I can't fathom that, and like it honestly made those games too easy. Like, I kind of wish I didn't Dynamax and played like you did. And brute forced it. I think it would have been more.
I had the right strat.
It would have been more challenging, right? It was certainly not made to be a challenge, and Pokemon games aren't meant to be challenging.
No.
We have to make all these self-imposed rules to make them challenging.
Yeah,
but
it's for me.
Maybe with the exception of Arceus.
Maybe with the exception of Arceus. And I don't think it's necessarily for you. I think it is, again, for kids. And again, for somebody who just wants to come home and try and play through the game. So, but then you end up putting your own imposed rules. Yeah, Dynamax was easy mode, honestly. And it, like the Gigantamax, it was so hard to get them. It made it where
I mean, they made it easier when the Isle of Armor came out.
Yes. At the same time, I have to pay to make that the main gimmick easier and to make like my mega replacement easier.
There's a whole discussion that could be had there about how Pokemon, at least competitively, has become play to play.
Well, yeah, that's
Because
most Nintendo games are.
True. But I mean, Pokemon in particular, you know, it used to be if you had 2 copies of the game, you were A-okay.
I mean, even that was kind of
Even that
pay
was
to
asking
play.
a lot.
Yeah.
But like, if you had a friend, you probably could at least complete your Pokedex. Now it's like, okay, well, you have to get Isle of Armor because you need access to Urshifu. You need to get what was the one after that? Crown Tundra in order to have Calyrex. Because Calyrex is still broken. The last 2, I'm trying to think. I don't think there was anything super crazy actually in the first DLC for Scarlet and Violet. Is that's the teal mask? No. That was the teal mask. Ogerpon. Yeah, an Ogerpon's OP.
Yeah.
And then Terapagos is not good now, but it
Who
very
knows?
well could be.
Yeah. So, and I mean, the pay to play, sure. Still with the Dynamaxing, I wish it was a little more balanced. You just had too many stats, and they made it where they had the candies, and the candies work if you did it in the game. So then your opponents never had 0 candy Dynamax Pokemon, and you could just have like level 10 Dynamax candied Pokemon, and it was just really unfair. So they made the game a little too easy.
I will say there were a couple of cool strats that came out of it.
Yes.
I did really like what was it? You use Dragapult and Colossal, and then you Dynamax Colossal and use Surf to activate a weakness policy, because then your max speed +2 in both attacks.
It was that was in VGC. You used to do it with Quillfish, 0 and do
Really?
Aqua Jet.
Oh, and get the Intimidate too.
Yeah, and Quillfish would have Intimidate, but like you'd have Aqua Jet, and you'd Aqua Jet your own Colossal.
Yeah.
You'd run 0 attack, negative attack nature, Aquajetic, weakness policy, steam engine, full speed. Because it was the weakest attacked water Pokemon, as well as having Intimidate. So it was just like a perfect pairing. So setting up sweepers. It just fun strats. So yeah, you could do fun strats, but honestly, if we're moving into that discussion of the ones I don't want to see come back, it's probably Dynamax. For me, at least.
See, I'm fine with none of them coming back at this point.
I'd like Megas, personally.
I'd like Megas to come back. Sorry, I really want to accept Megas. I think Megas was genuinely interesting.
Again, from new Pokemon design.
I've kept too much attention on competitive singles and what that's done, and terrestrialization has just made the entire ladder a mess.
That's interesting. That terrestrialization makes ladder awful. Because that's true.
It's just because it makes certain Pokemon suddenly become into, oh, they don't have a counter.
Yep.
Volcarona was a big one. You know, Volcarona has been in OU since it came out in Gen 5, and then suddenly it becomes Terra Grass. Okay, nothing stops it. Because now it has a 1.5x boost on Giga Drain, and now it's unkillable.
Yep. That's interesting. And it would be, and like you can't necessarily, risk doing fire, because if I'm just going to throw out something that has fire, I'm just not going to terrestrialize, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just take a neutral hit. That's interesting. That is, that's something where you don't have the open team sheet.
And that's not to say that there's other reasons why the ladder hasn't been a mess. I mean, gosh, there's been so many bans this generation. Iron Bundle's been banned. Chin Pao got banned. Chin Yu got banned. There's a whole bunch of new Pokemon that were just immediately like, yeah, we can't handle this.
Yeah.
In any sort of balanced way, which they're better in VGC. Palafin was another one. Yeah. If I had to pick one gimmick, though, not to come back, I'd actually probably pick Sea Crystals. I think it was just overly complicated. Like, Dynamax was at least accessible. Everybody can understand. Pokemon get big. Pokemon hit hard.
Yeah. I think the Z crystals, at least if you have the opportunity to clean up some of the ones, and honestly, like any of the boosts probably should just do a double boost. Bulk up, +2 attack, +2 defense. Fine. Sword Dance, +4 attack. Fine. I know it sounds really, really scary, but fine, right? Just making it really streamlined. Double splash does nothing. Fine. Okay, unless or Omni Boost. Why not make it like actually simple? Have that one just do an Omni Boost. Just make it a little bit more streamlined and simple. But
are you okay getting swept by a magic by Gyarados?
Yeah, why not? Just sure. You know, just a full Omni Boost Gyarados. It would make it interesting. It would make it very different. And you know, just
physical attack has no power here.
Yeah, right. So
Omni Boost.
So all stats.
Okay.
So you a single boost to attack, defense, special attack, special defense, speed. 5,
Okay.
yeah. So, Ancient Power has like a 10% chance to do that.
Yep. And
Silverwind.
Silverwind? Yeah, Silverwind.
Yeah, Silverwind. So
I was gonna say Ominous Wind. That's different.
Wouldn't know if an attack doesn't do damage. I don't use it.
So those do damage. I'm just gonna be perfectly honest with you. Those do damage, right? But they never did a lot of damage. But they had a 10% chance to boost all your stats, and it was
probably
fun.
didn't use it.
Probably not.
And every once in a while, something will still run it. That was something I did like with Dynamax. Dynamax did have some like weird Pokemon using weird moves.
Yes, that's fair.
Porygon Hyper Beam.
Why not? It hits hard. Hits like an absolute truck.
Yep.
So, what mechanic would you not want to bring back, Drazel?
I mean, without having played some of the others, I don't know if it's fair to count them or discount them, but I guess Dynamax would be the one that I wouldn't bring back since I adamantly refuse to use it.
That's fair enough.
You're gonna go with that one.
Pokemon small here.
And that's true. You didn't really play Gen 5. I'm now thinking of that. Thinking back to that.
No, I dropped off around Platinum.
Because I don't think you would have liked the gems either. Because
if I had to really think about what I was doing.
Exactly. Like looking at it from like a casual perspective, again, the gems are fun, but also the way that we both play RPGs, because it's definitely like something ingrained in our DNA, is that we don't use our items. We hoard
brute force RPGs
and brute force RPGs. Like we don't use our potions. You walk into the Elite Four and you bought another like 50 revives and 50 potions.
Yeah.
You maybe used 4, right? But you spent all of your money on the revives and full restores, even though you also picked up 36 potions along the way. But you just didn't use a single one of them because that's just the way that it worked.
I don't need these.
I don't need these, right? And so because
this sign won't stop me, I can't read.
Gems would work like berries and be consumables. I never used them. I didn't like the aspect of like having a consumable item. And when you're a kid trying to teach yourself Pokemon, like I remember us even having that conversation of thinking that statuses carried over for the entire run through. So if you got growled by a Rattata or tail whipped by a Rattata on Route 1 in Red and Blue, you had that defense drop when you were facing the Elite Four. Because again, it didn't tell you. It just said my defense dropped.
Given how the game was put together,
maybe
that may be true.
it could have been true. So at the same time, using consumables just not. I know that neither one of us likes consumables, so I don't think that you would have liked the gems either, personally.
Yeah, probably not then.
Personally, because I know I didn't like them, but they're still in the game, and honestly, they're just not a problem and a non-factor. The only one that you use is flying with acrobatics now.
Yep.
No.
And I can't think of any other gem that I've seen at any point in
Nope.
any match I've played, any time I've seen anybody play a match.
Nope. No point.
Like, if you're gonna do that, life orb's more valuable.
Yep. So
I guess the next best question then would be, Megas are coming back. We have that announcement. Legends Z-A is coming out. Drazzle, remind me, did you play Arceus? You didn't?
Despite your best attempts to get me to buy it,
I really
did not.
tried, because it is such a... Oh.
it is a really good game.
It's a shockingly good game, and it actually has some difficult moments where you have to think about things, which was fun.
The
we know my track record with that.
having it be a non-traditional Pokemon game and appealing to a newer audience and it being successful is great to see them follow up on it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's Go was very successful because of Pokemon Go, but it was a little disappointing to have them not follow up as of now on those, and instead make a Gen 4 remake that was soulless and clear cash grab. At the same time, the Legends games aren't for everybody. I'm not a huge fan of the Dark Souls-esque RPGs because I find I get too lost in those games, and I don't have the time to get too lost in a game. It's part of the reason I like multiplayer games. And I'm saying this because I know about your quest, and I was either going to let you bring it up or I was going to bring it up.
I wasn't going to bring up my quest.
Fine. For Zach in the audience, he tried to get a shiny and complete the entire Pokedex in Arceus.
I'm so close. I need to go finish.
Yeah, and that's the scary part. Is just the amount of time that takes, and I don't have that
put
time. 500
hours in. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't have that time. The reason that Smash Bros has over 1,000 hours is because I accidentally leave my Switch on, like on lobby. And
hey, Drazzle, how many hours do you think you have in Overwatch?
I was gonna say that I'd log in and check, but I've been informed that.
Nice.
yeah, solid. Probably 1,500 or so.
Yeah.
So only...
if I was to take a guess. That's a conservative guess. It
okay,
could be
I had a
more.
feeling it might be more.
It might be. I will check and get back to you.
I used to have that amount of time, but I just don't have that amount of time to get lost in those types of RPGs. I would love to. And so for me, it was, all right, let's beat Arceus. This is a cool story. I completed the Dex to get the secret ending. And then, cool, I moved on.
We'll try and keep it hidden because Nox, actually, who usually co-hosts with me, and I'm not going to try and speak on her behalf too much, but I did actually talk her into getting Arceus.
Nice.
And she started it, and she told me it's too scary.
Oh.
But I really want her to finish it because it is a good story. It's interesting. It's different, especially when you do know the rest of the Pokemon lore. But even without it, like, I think there's something there that's special. And when we talk about that secret event at the end and that battle
was hard.
You and I had a conversation about it. I remember because I had played... I wasn't done yet. I wasn't done with main story, but I was close. I was very, very close. I had beaten all of the Titans. Not Titans. What the heck were they called?
Guardians.
I beat the 5 of them.
Totems.
So I was getting very close to the end of the game. At least the main story. And you came into the chat one day and said, "Oh, have you beaten the game yet? Like the whole game?" I'm like, "No, why?" And you're like, "Oh, that last battle, I went in there at this level. I was not ready." And I think you said, like, I was like level 75.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
It's going to be that.
Yep.
Okay.
I wasn't even talking about that fight, but again, there was this was the first Pokemon game that I lost fights in.
And part of it's just because the turn order's wonky.
Turn order's wonky, but again, the fights are difficult. Dying on the totem fights, there was out of the four.
It's gonna bother me. I gotta look it up.
Yeah, there's 4 of them. There's 4 of 5. There's 5. I died on 2 of them, and then obviously the secret final boss. I died like 4 or 5 times just to that one. So for me, I know I'm personally just very happy there's another Legends game coming out, hoping that it can live up to the initial, and then also the potential of seeing new mega evolutions. We also have that conversation.
Noble
Where-
Pokemon.
What is it?
Noble.
Noble. The previous generation gives us hints about upcoming changes or new technology that's going to be implemented into the future games. So you saw that with Sword and Shield having a semi-open world that have individual zones. Then you have a fully open world with Scarlet and Violet.
Mm-hmm.
In Scarlet and Violet, not only did you have this fully open world where, again, for Arceus, you had that zone system again, but the Pokemon roaming around, you had the Pal Park, I think it's called, at the very end in the DLC for Scarlet and Violet,
I haven't
where
been
you
able to
can
play DLC yet.
you can turn into a Pokemon, right? So having that potentially be in Legends Z-A, I think adds a new element that again brings in a different demographic that may not be interested in those types of games.
Yeah, I'd agree. Absolutely.
Drazil, would you want to run around as a Charmander?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hands down.
Like I would
Yeah.
I don't care how much time I have. I would spend a day just running around as Squirtle and blowing bubbles. I think that's hilarious. Right? Am I wrong? If I have some sort of interactable move, because you could only do the regular like overworld fighting that you could do in Scarlet and Violet, but if they add it where I have to like bubble things, and Charmander, if you use Ember to burn down trees to get logs to get resources, like come on, that
Going
huge
back to Arceus.
brand new demographic for Legends Z-A. It's brand new demographic.
Pokemon survival game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, exactly. And after seeing the success of Pal World, maybe they do have something a little bit cooked up.
That's a hot topic.
Yeah.
Drazil, how do you feel about Megas coming back?
Would give it a try. It could very easily go the way of Dynamax, where I'm like, I'm not doing it, and like it, because sort of like what Paradox was hinting at. Do I have the time to learn a new skill? Yeah. Do I want to put the time into it? No. So I have 1,500 hours in Overwatch because I've learned it. I don't have to learn a new thing. I can just pick it up and play. Which is kind of what I do with Pokemon is I don't want to learn a new thing and then just brute force it as is. And okay, boomer, settle down.
I know you've used Megas, but at least when we did the Pixelmon one, because I helped you with a Mega Charizard at one point.
I feel like that was probably my only choice in attempting to compete with you guys.
Probably. But at the same time too, like having Mega Charizard as an option is really interesting, and they may make a Mega Charizard Z with this at this point. The fact that there's an X and Y, yeah, the X realization of like, you're right. There's gonna be a Mega Charizard Z.
I don't want there to be though. Charizard gets enough special treatment. I'm sorry.
Charizard is the best Pokemon.
Yeah, it's gonna be mono dragon type.
You do know my Discord icon is a Pokemon.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not Charizard.
Fair enough.
I mean, you're wrong. It's fine.
Yeah. But that would also mean that we would have held items in a Legends game too, most likely.
I mean, maybe not. They could do it in the way that they did in Let's Go.
where it was.
You just got a Mega Band, and then everything
Oh
could
yeah, that's true.
Mega Evolve.
I forgot they had megas in Let's Go, but they do.
Yeah.
Only the starters, right? Or can
No, it was everything because they surprised you at the end and were like, "Oh, by the way, here's a Mega Pidgeot."
would have helped if I completed Let's Go.
I've never played it. I've just watched enough other people play it.
That's
so
really sad then.
Yeah. Well,
so
Is that
was-
a gimmick that we should talk about too?
let's go.
Let's go. Uh-huh.
I mean, I think we
Yeah.
could, but
Probably a gimmick.
I think it was definitely just riding the success of Pokemon Go.
Oh no, I got frustrated with Let's Go because it versus the app-based game, I found it so much harder to get Pokeballs that I couldn't just like yeet balls at things until I caught it like I do in Pokemon Go. And I guess because I couldn't brute force it, I got mad at it and never finished it.
money was scarce in that game. They've
Yeah.
always been scarce in Gen 1, and there isn't an easy, like, straight line of how do I get more money? Like, how do I move the currency machine? Are there trainers I can re-battle and everything?
Yeah.
So that definitely doesn't help with the ability to brute force it. Plus, you got so much more experience for capturing Pokemon than beating them in that game. It makes it far more difficult. At the same time, it still goes back to that bringing a different demographic of gamer to your franchise that's 30 years old.
Sure.
32, 30? 30 years old? 30 years old.
30.
Mhm. Yeah, this was 94.
96.
I don't know.
No, I don't know. I don't know when Green
It's
came
close
out.
to 30 years, but
It's close to 30 years. Close to 30 years of a franchise. How do you bring a different demographic of gamer to this? You have the Dark Souls enthusiast and RPG enthusiast coming in for Legends. You have the very casual gamer that loved Pokemon Go that's going to then buy a Switch and potentially Let's Go. So having Megas come back, I don't think you're going to necessarily get that initial rush of the gamer that they wanted to for that. However, you have probably what is the most popular mechanic and gimmick tied in with the game that is not mainstream but is also very popular.
which is interesting because it is considered to be a mainstream title.
Right. Well, now it is. I don't think they initially thought that Legends was going to be a mainstream.
No, it was announced as a main title. So Pokemon just had a really good year that year because it was Legends Arceus in January, if I recall. And then April was BDSP, which we can ignore. And then they had Scarlet and Violet in November. Pokemon Company is doing just fine.
Yeah, I mean, they've always just been doing just fine.
True.
But I'm trying to see sales. 1.4 million copies within 3 days. Another million throughout September or February. And then, like, it was still selling, like, 200,000 units by March. That's pretty darn good. 14.83 million copies. That's... Dang, that's up there. Wow. That sold more than Sword and Shield and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, but we knew it was more than BDSP.
Well, yeah.
But
Sorry, BDSP. You weren't what we expected.
But 14
I'm
million
excited for
copies is
ZA.
an massive success. Yeah, I'm very excited for ZA. Very, very excited. If it's going to be as good as Legends Arceus, I don't like that's my expectation. It needs to be as good as Legends Arceus. So
I think the one thing I'll just touch on as we try and wrap this up, Legends Arceus had a pretty good story. It wasn't exactly what you were expecting. Like, there were the things that were happening that you kind of could be like, oh yes, well, this happened, so this is probably likely. And especially if you played through Platinum or Diamond Pearl, like, you kind of went, oh, well, you know, the bad guy in this was this, so it's probably this again here, and you kind of put two and two together. There was a lot of that, and then there were things that just came out of the blue. You were like, I mean, it makes sense now, but like, what? Huh? And I think Scarlet and Violet had a genuinely good story. They did some really different things from their formula. I mean, it's always been that you don't find the legendary Pokemon until the end. And they said, no, we're going to start the game by you meeting them. And I think that worked out really well for them story-wise. I feel way more attachment to Miraidon than I have ever felt to basically any other legendary.
I don't know if it's any other legendary, but that might be the nostalgia talking, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. There was a big sense of accomplishment in catching, which was the one that ran, and Suicune? Was that the one that would jump around places?
The ones
Yeah.
that run around, the roaming
The roaming
legendaries.
legendaries have always been
Yeah.
a pain in the
Yeah.
butt.
I
was-
enjoyed it though. I liked that challenge.
I was gonna say, like, Gen 2, I feel a strong attachment to those legendaries because you do capture them very mid-game, the covered legendary at least.
Yeah. Yep.
Like,
Well,
I think that was
if you include Kanto and everything else.
yeah. And then even because like Groudon and Kyogre were like this like massive, they were the pinnacle of the story point and kept showing up, you know, a little bit of attachment there. But I will say that Gen 4, Gen 5, Gen 6, and Gen 7, and probably even like Gen 8, I have no attachment to any of those legendaries, any of the box legendaries. Like Zekrom, you learn in Reshiram, you're getting as you're fighting after you beat the Elite Four the first time. So what's the point? Gen 4, Palkia and Dialga, yeah, it's at the pinnacle of the story, but they're not consistently being shown throughout the story. So there is just kind of like no sense of, all right, like, here we go. Here's my legendary. Let me go beat the Elite Four. Gen 6, same thing. Yes, they're at the pinnacle of the story, but there isn't that lead up. Like, I'm not invested in that Pokemon. And then find Sword and Shield, you meet Zamazenta and Zacian in early game, and then they just appear at the end when you're beating Eternatus. Sure, why not? So I do agree they did a really good job with this box legendary, but I think like Gen 2, because I got to use it more, I do like how Owen Lugia.
Oh yeah, and that experience will triumph
Yeah.
anything. I just love the fact that they put it in the way that wasn't just like,
Yeah,
hey, here's a free legendary at the beginning of your game that's just gonna walk through everything else.
they took a risk with the story and it paid off very well.
It did. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and like there were twists and turns. They took some really big risks at the end. I don't want to
Mhm.
spoil it for anybody who may have not finished, but gosh, like there was some genuine emotion. Arven's actually just a tragic character.
Yep.
Well, with all that said, let's wrap it up and get into our final topic. Let's do our real world segment. This is where we usually talk about things unrelated to games. Sometimes it's related to games, but it's oftentimes movies we're watching, books we're reading, music we're listening to, other things that are going on in our life. Drazzle, what do you got?
So I recently watched I guess I don't know what I want to call this. It's a movie length movie, but it was an anime. It was called Suzume. I watched it because there was a cat. I was unprepared for what was going to happen to said cat.
Okay.
Have you watched it, Aaron? He
No,
seems like he's speaking with okay.
I'm not, but I'm not gonna watch it now. So
It's not in the way that you're thinking.
okay.
There's it's not a cat.
Okay.
It ends up so it's a teenage girl. She's lost her mother when she was very young. Her aunt has I guess it was her aunt. Her aunt's taken her in. She's raised her. She meets a strange guy. They go off on an adventure. They
Some comments
so
we can make about
from
that.
what I know, it's questionable, but
Bad?
anime. They in Japanese lore, from what I'm understanding from this anime, I have no idea if it's within this anime or actual real world Japan, but they in the anime they pose it as they believe in gods that live under Japan, and when they are angered or when they're not sealed away, they cause the earthquakes. So this strange guy ends up being a person who seals away, they call it the worm. I'm sure it's something cooler in Japanese, but it's the worm. And they're running around trying to close all these portals. The cats end up being essentially soul keepers, or keystones is what they're called, and they're what keeps the portal sealed. And very early in the anime, the main female character frees one of them. So it's just this goofy cat that's running around. It speaks to her. It's trying to make friends with her. But throughout most of the movie, you almost feel like this character is the antagonist. Every time he shows up, something bad happens, and you're like, "Wow, this little shit, we freed it, and it's making our lives awful." I'm not going to give away the ending, but I spent like 3 hours after the movie googling and scrolling through Reddit and being like, "What just happened?" Because I've did I understand this the way I thought I did? So it left me, because I didn't give a shit about the people. I cared about this cat, which I'm sure wasn't the point of the anime. Even
No, it
PK,
was.
when we got to the end of it, he was like, "Are you crying?" I was like, "What happened to the cat?" And he's like, that was not the point of this." But the cat. And so it was very good. It left me with a lot of questions. I think it took a very uh I mean, it's a foreign film, and it took a very foreign approach to this concept. It was didn't really have American tones where the animal was coddled, essentially. Um, the artwork was fantastic. A little bit Miyazaki inspired, but it's not from Studio Ghibli.
Mhm.
But it was a very lovely anime, and I would recommend it. Just be prepared for the cat.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What do you got, Paradox?
I thought the cat was gonna like die. I mean, it's gonna make me really sad.
I'm not gonna tell you what
Ah,
happens to the
just shit.
cat.
All right. Well,
Cause
we're both animal lovers, if that's not obvious. So, I mean, I showed you both before we started. I got a kitten,
Yep.
new kitten. His
yes,
name's Bruno.
it's
He's
adorable.
taking up a lot of our time. He's a long hair, all black kitten. Um, my wife's aunt, her cat got pregnant, said I can't have these kittens. Come take one. And my wife was like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." And it's okay, But no, he's adorable. He's absolutely so sweet, so cute. You forget how it is to have a kitten, because this is our third cat. So our first one we got when he was an adult, Cheshire, and then Squall we got when he was a kitten, but Squall never really felt like a kitten. Like, I don't remember. He just kind of became big one day, you know? He's always been a big cat just because he is a Bengal, and he's just always had an insane amount of energy. So we kind of haven't ever gotten out of that kitten stage. So it will be interesting to have a cat one day with Bruno.
Because Nox isn't here, I'm gonna do a book recommendation. I not too long ago finished The Deal by L. Kennedy. This is not young adult. Do not be fooled by the cover. It is an adult romance novel. Thoroughly enjoyed it though. It falls into the trope that a lot of romance novels do, where it is definitely idealistic. However, it was a fun read. I really enjoyed it. It's about a young lady in college and a hockey player and their ongoing romance and the trials and tribulations that they go through. Part of a series. There's 5 books, I believe. Um, yeah, yeah, super highly recommend. And I think that's going to be it for us. Thanks everyone for joining us. Hope you enjoyed our discussion today. We release these episodes weekly. If that's not enough for you though, come join us on the Discord server. We're here probably too often. If you have your own ideas, any insights you want to offer, think we just sound like a cool group of people, go click the link down in the doobly-doo. Drazil, Paradox, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you so much. I know it was short notice today.
It's fine. Had fun.
Here
Thank
most
you
of
to
the time
everyone.
anyway.
Too true. Thank you to everyone at home for listening to us, and hope to see you in the next one. Bye.